It's live. I'm still looking up windows, but I've put us live.
Okay, good. Finally,
This is being
live.
made.
Finally, people will be able to watch this show.
Oh man. So how are things there?
Good.
Are you
Um,
north of that horrible rainstorm that's hitting the West Coast?
we are.
Okay.
Yeah, we had a cold weekend actually. We got hit by a bunch of these rivers, these atmospheric
Yeah,
rivers, which
yeah.
by the way, I love. Like it finally feels like a proper explanation. We would always call them the Pineapple Express.
Which makes no sense
Well,
whatsoever.
well, sure, because it's a sort of storm that's coming from the tropics. And so it's
But
very warm, but also just dumps an enormous amount of water on us.
fair,
But
fair.
this idea of an atmospheric river, that there is just this gigantic amount of water that is passing through the atmosphere and is being dropped as soon as it hits mountains, it's just great. I mean, it's just they nailed the evocative concept, and now you can see them. Like you see these atmospheric rivers, and it really looks like this snake, this
Yeah.
wet snake slithering towards your home that's about to just disgorge enormous amounts of water. And it's just like, the people in California are going through this. It's trickier for them, I think, because they go through very dry spells and then they go through very wet spells. And so, when the ground has been dry for a very long time, it's very impervious to the water, and so it just instantly floods. And here, because we have forests everywhere, the ground is all like soft and loamy, and so you can have these atmospheric rivers dump down and the forest can absorb them, and so
Yeah.
you don't get the flooding. You get the flooding in the rivers, and where the rivers meet the sea, and where the sea have king tides. Then, like, we have a park that we call Lewis Park, and during the big storms we call it Lewis Lake, and you people literally are out there with kayaks and canoes, um enjoying 3 feet of water in 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 a new lake that didn't exist there before. And every now and then we get some flooding that actually causes some damage. We're so used to it. And we had a about 3 years ago, it blew out my road.
Oh,
Like my whole driveway was washed out, and there was this
and
giant hole where the road to my house used to be. And
and
we
you live uphill.
Mm, mhm, mhm. Yeah, yeah. So, there's all these streams that feed off down the mountain. This was like in November, and
Yeah.
they meet, and then just too much water was coming down, and the culverts were blocked on the road on my driveway, or on my, not driveway, the road that leads to my driveway.
Yeah.
And but we're the only house on this road.
Yeah.
And so it got just completely, so the and I think like a log or a rock or something fell into part of the culvert, and so it backed up, and then just flowed across the top of the road. The road was gravel; it just tore the whole road apart, and exposed it down to like 6 feet deep. You could see the culverts were cleanly shown, and then another part of the road was sort of hammered as well, and it was going to be a big deal. And so we talked to the city, and we're like,
Yeah.
what are we supposed to do about this? Like, we used to be able to drive to our house, and now we can't. And
Yeah.
they said, well, good news. Because that stream is a fish bearing stream, it falls under the city's requirements. And so even though we're the only house on this road,
They
they
put a
they
bridge in?
they fixed it. They didn't put a bridge in, but they put in a giant, they over engineered it. They put two giant new culverts in, gave it tons more capacity. It's a
Good.
completely different chunk of road now. It's been engineered for a
Yeah.
an apocalyptic future. And so, instead of me having to spend $1 million or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. The line between culvert, bridge, and
Yeah. Yeah,
canal is
this
very
culvert is
small.
yeah, this culvert was 8 feet tall. So I could stand in the culvert with tons of headspace, and be fine. And then there's a smaller culvert that's more like half that size or maybe 2/3 that size.
Oh,
But
geez.
before it was 2 culverts that were maybe, you know, a foot and a half, 2 feet. And so they multiplied by a factor of 20 how much water can pass through that.
Yeah, yeah,
And this is this is a conversation that they're having now around the whole city as they look at our ability to shed water. We have these drier summers now with more fire risk. And so that's one challenge that you have to think about. And then we have these wetter winters with much more flooding risk. And so that's a completely different challenge that you have to prepare for. And these are, I wonder why we are having hotter, drier summers and warmer, wetter winters. What's that about? And yeah, so okay. You ready to do your job?
maybe. I think so. I have coffee. We're going to
Oh,
go
good.
with I have coffee.
Good. Let me know when you're ready to start.
All right. I am pressing I'm pressing shift. I'm pressing record on the video. I'm pressing record on my audio. I'm sniffling because I cleaned all weekend and I'm allergic to dust.
Yep.
I am not sick, humans. I simply am very allergic to dust, and my house is much cleaner and my sinuses are much dirtier.
All right. Tell me when you're ready.
I'm ready.
Astronomy Cast, episode 707. What goes into sample return missions for the Moon and Mars? Welcome to Astronomy Cast, our weekly space journey through the cosmos, where we help you understand not only what we know, but how we know what we know. I'm Fraser Cain. I'm the publisher of Universe Today. With me, as always, is Dr. Pamela Gay, a senior scientist for the Planetary Science Institute and the director of CosmoQuest. Hey, Pamela, how you doing?
I am doing well. I feel like we made it through Groundhog Day, and signs of spring are coming. The first bulbs have come up.
Yep.
It is all very exciting. We
So
have made it through another winter, except you have an atmospheric river, sort of.
I don't. No, the folks in California do. We're fine. It's kind of cold and clear right now. It's nice and sunny.
Nice.
But so on that note, and I forget the exact sort of mythology of this, but in Japan, they have more seasons. They don't just have, spring, summer, fall, winter. I mean, they have those, but they also
Yeah.
have named a bunch of other seasons. And like cherry blossom, the time when you see the cherry
Hmm.
blossoms and the time when you see the first ice on the lake, and it's very sort of evocative of these things that happen on a yearly
Yeah.
basis. And so my wife and I have started to note those seasons as well. So first crocus, um,
Yes.
ducks arrive on our pond, first frogs, first time we hear frogs, first time we see newts in our ponds,
Hmm.
first dragonfly, first tulip, first crocus, and it breaks up all the pieces of the
Yeah.
and it's amazing. And so right now I'm sort of looking at the calendar and first crocus day is coming. And then shortly after that comes first, I don't know, daffodil day, and then
Yeah.
swallows
Then,
arrive,
right.
right? And it's sort of neat to think about just these cycles as we move through the planet. There's not just these there are these smaller things.
Hmm.
Um and
First
they're like,
robin of the year. That's the one that
yeah,
I always
or
notice.
or like in March here we get weird fluffy clouds that show up. And they only show up in March. And then like before that it's drizzly, overcast, and then after that it's generally clear skies with the occasional fluffy cloud. But in March we get what I call interesting clouds, right? That are like big, weird. You would think they're like cumulonimbus clouds, but they're not, and they're just so cool. And then we get them in
All
March,
right.
and then we get them in October, and so you see that and you're like progress, and so this just reminded me. So you were talking about Groundhog Day.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have the first insect that we see that isn't just like flies and things like that
Yeah.
are these things called stone flies. And so Carla and I decided that stone flies are our groundhogs. So the first time we see a stone fly, the question is, are we seeing that stone fly in the sun? Which we were. So I think it's bad
That's
news, right? The stonefly saw his shadow, and that's bad news.
I can't help you with any of these things. What I can tell you is I'm on the northern edge of where two different cicada broods are supposed to hatch this summer,
Yeah,
and it's a bit terrifying to
it's gonna be loud.
contemplate.
Yeah,
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 like cicadas are already loud without any of the special broods because there are always cicadas. There's always
yeah.
cicadas. But when you get a brood, they're suddenly like they're getting into your house. There's so many.
I do hope you record this. Sounds great.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, we've sent robots to other worlds. The amount of science that we can deploy to the surface of another planet can't compare with the vast science labs we have on Earth. That's why more and more missions are for a sample return, bringing pieces of alien worlds back to Earth where we study them with the proper equipment. And we will talk about it in a second, but it's time for a break. And we're back. Sample return. So what's the original sample return mission?
Luna, the Soviet sample returns to the moon. They brought back pounds and pounds and pounds and pounds of rocks over a number of missions.
Wow.
Their most recent Luna mission failed miserably, crashed into the surface of the moon, as the moon has been expecting robots to do lately.
Yeah, the moon is hungry.
The moon is very, very hungry at the moment. But in the past, the Soviet Union didn't focus once they saw what Apollo was doing and once they saw what the world was doing. They focused on over a number of years continuing to do sample return missions from a variety of different places. And the thing about going to the moon is it doesn't require a whole lot of technology as long as you're on the near side.
Mm.
You have to get there. You have to fling yourself back off of the surface with enough delta V to escape the moon's very weak gravity. So that's not that hard in the grand scheme of things. And then you need just enough fuel to make the needed orbital insertions to get back to Earth, which in the grand scheme of the universe is really nearby and doesn't require a huge amount of delta V. You just kind of fall.
And then you use the Earth's atmosphere for a break.
Yeah, yeah. So they got as the Soviet Union, which no longer exists, got really good at it. And then folks forgot how to return samples from large spheres for a few decades.
But I mean, don't the Apollo missions count?
Well,
I mean, they sent very complicated
true.
meat robots
We did
to
not
the
call
surface of the
this
moon.
robotic sample return. We just called it sample return. It's
Sample return.
true.
And then they grabbed rocks with their meat grabbers, and then
They
they put them
also had
into
clippy things.
clippy things. They grabbed the rocks with their clippy things using their meat actuators, and then they put them into what I'm going to call bags. And then they return to Earth, and like the vast majority of the samples of the moon that we have on our hands now, just hundreds of kilograms of samples of the moon,
Yeah.
came from the Apollo missions.
Yeah, let's face it, when it comes to picking up rocks, human beings, we've been doing it since we toddled. It's just what human beings do. We pick up rocks.
Yeah, I mean, if every single listener to our podcast right now today doesn't have a car full of rocks that they picked up from all the times you're out on a walk and you're like,
Yeah.
I like that rock, I will make it my own.
Yeah.
I would be shocked. Like,
I
we
wouldn't
all
say a
love
car
to grab
full.
rocks.
I would say all of us have somewhere in our house and car and backpacks
There's
a
a
random
pipeline for
sampling of
sure.
rocks. Yeah.
Yeah, pipeline. Like, you're out on a walk, you find a rock, you put it in your backpack, you notice your backpack's too heavy, you transfer them to your car, you notice your car is getting a little cluttered by rocks, you put them into your house,
I
and
I
then eventually you realize your house is getting too complicated and you throw them out the back door. And
See, I have fish tanks, and so every rock I
mm,
collect that doesn't appear to be something that will kill the fish when it dissolves in the water, it goes in a fish tank. And if it
yeah,
doesn't go in a fish tank, it doesn't get to stay.
right. So this is hike sample return.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's true.
Yeah. All right. So the Apollo missions brought back time. And what I love about the Apollo missions is they right away cracked a bunch of them open and we're like,
Yeah.
let's see what's inside. But also they put a ton of them into cold storage and said, our science isn't good enough yet, but it will be in the future.
And that's one of the really cool things that has been happening with the Johnson sample labs down at Johnson Space Flight Center. They have an amazing facility with the moral equivalent of fume hoods, where they keep these samples in nitrogen-rich atmospheres. They deal with them with like, you have to reach in with gloves or use tools and actuators, and they can move them around within all of this. But they recognize at every stage, no, we don't know everything right now. So just during the pandemic, they released a new, I don't know what the collective term for
Tranche?
tranche.
Tranche?
Tranche is a good word.
Yeah.
They released a new tranche of rocks that a variety of researchers, some who remembered and were in graduate school during the original Apollo missions and were particularly excited, um, they finally got the chance to do the things that technology didn't allow them to do in the past. And the thing with images is we can keep all the images in the world on a hard drive in their original form and just reprocess them forever. It's a non-destructive process.
Hmm.
But when it comes to processing samples, you can only run a sample through a mass spec really once, because that mass spec is going to take that sample apart. You can
Right.
only,
It's a destructive process.
yeah, and even electron scanning microscopes, they often will put a layer of gold on top of the sample to make sure that it is perfectly reflective. And all of these things prevent future study that researchers may want to do.
So we're going to talk about this again in a second and talk about that big break. But first, it's time for another break, a small break. And we're back. So after the Apollo missions returned, I think what last people set foot on the moon in 1972,
Yeah.
it was a while before samples were returned from the moon again. When did that happen next?
Hold on, I don't have the calendar in front of me. Rich, I apologize, but I'm pretty sure there was a Luna sample mission after the Apollo. I remember being confused by that when I prepped. Hold on. Luna mission
Like late 70s, early
summaries.
80s?
This is why I rebooted my computer and lost my Windows humans. I'm sorry. Um, Luna 20 was in 72. Sample return in 76.
76.
That's the one I was
N-
thinking of. Okay.
Um, yeah, okay, all right. Yeah, so the last sample return from the moon with the Lunar program was 76 with Luna
Yes.
24.
So you want to
Okay.
ask again?
Um, so we had after the Apollo missions, okay, the last people to set foot on the moon was Apollo 17, and that
Apollo
was 19
17.
and that was
Yes.
1972. So when did the last rocks return from the moon?
So Luna 24 and 76. So I'm a post Apollo baby, but I apparently still existed for the Luna missions, or already existed for the Luna missions. So Luna 24 in August of 1976 was the last gathering of grams of material by a Soviet spacecraft that was returned to Earth for science. Um, and then nothing for
Right.
a long time.
And that's interesting when you think about, like, while the Americans were sending humans to the moon to collect
Yeah.
those samples, the Soviet Luna program was ongoing
Yeah.
throughout the entire process. Like, there was one almost the 20th, Luna 20 was in February 1972, Luna 16, September 1970. So there were sample return missions happening
Yeah.
at roughly the same time that the Americans were sending their sample return missions. I wonder, like, in a grand scheme of things, was the Soviet method of having robots do it cheaper, more effective? Were you able to get the same amount of science? Because I mean, with the Apollo missions, there were some really special rocks that
Yeah.
came back from the moon, including ones that helped prove the the th- giant impact hypothesis of the formation of the moon.
And there's the much debated, isn't it a meteor rock that they brought back? And Astronauts are better at disobeying their masters.
Than robots.
Right. And so there were cases of mission control being like, time to head back. Time, no, seriously, dudes, head home. And
Right.
they're
Ooh,
like, no,
shiny.
one more rock. I shall get
Or
one more
rock.
rock.
Yeah, especially because they foolishly sent a geologist on that last
Right,
mission.
right.
Like he's gonna stop collecting. No, he is
No.
not.
And so the human beings with their meat actuators, and I'm just going to be using that term from you forever now, they were capable of uh, malicious compliance and complete lack of compliance in a way no robot ever achieved.
Yep.
And so they were capable of different science. And the other thing that was happening was NASA Johnson, there was a lot of money sunk in to where they keep those samples and the facilities that they have. And the Soviet Union was kind of running down, and I haven't been able to find good documentation on what their storage facility was like. And while we still see US collaborating scientists, so not just US scientists, but scientists from nations that collaborate with NASA, presenting new papers, new research on all of those lunar samples, you don't see the same long-term science coming out of the former Soviet Union. And all the nations that belonged to the former Soviet Union. A whole lot of their science was coming from the Ukraine. And so I have to wonder, was part of the problem also they just didn't have the ground-based facilities to support? And I'm not sure we can know at this point. And I hate not knowing.
Yeah, yeah. So that break, we were talking, there was a giant break.
Yeah.
1976, we got the last Luna mission retrieving a sample from the surface of the
Yeah.
moon. When did a sample return mission come back from the moon after that?
Oh, a sample return. So there wasn't even anything going to look at it up close and personal until 1990. So we had the Hitan mission in 1990 that made an impact in the surface, and then Clementine orbiting in 94. So we went almost 20 years without even like consistently orbiting. And as far as sample returns, we really had to wait until China just went and did it very recently.
Like 3 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. So 2021, Selene 3 had a sample return ascent vehicle. Yeah.
Wait, what? Hold on. I don't know what you.
That was Japan. They had a sample
Yes.
return ascent vehicle. It didn't work. And I
Yeah.
have
So
to admit,
Chang'e 5
yeah,
was November 2020.
yeah.
That was
So
their. Do you want to redo that again? Because you jumped to Celine, which.
So I don't see a sample return on Chang'e 5 on the timeline I'm looking at. That's deeply confusing. Let me
Yeah.
open
So
another
they recovered
source.
it. There's a sample return here. Let me give you a link. Here's
Okay.
the one that I'm using.
Yeah, I'm using USRAs and it has betrayed me.
Yeah, use this one and then go down to robotic missions. And then you'll see you've got the successful missions, including like I'm avoiding non-moon, non-Mars. So you've got, Stardust, Genesis,
Yeah.
Hayabusa 2, and then Osiris-Rex, and then you get Chang'e 5, November 23rd, 2020, which was when it launched. And they brought back 1.7.
Yeah, now I see it. Now I'm there.
Yep. Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. And so that's the break, right? That's our
Okay.
break from
Rich, we're sorry.
1976 to, I'm not sorry, Rich. You love this. This is for you, Rich. Yeah. All right. So let me ask the question again. So we got that break from 1976 until when? That actually robots brought samples back from the moon.
So we didn't even visit the moon until 1990. We didn't even orbit the moon until 1994. And when it comes to bringing back a sample, we're looking at 2020. There were
Right.
humans born who had time to go to college and become researchers on this mission between the last sample return and the most recent sample
Yeah.
return.
Yeah,
That's kind of
well
rude.
into their careers, right? Like in their 40s from when they were born.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a long time.
Yeah.
So tell me about the mission. What did the Chinese do?
So the Chinese, what didn't they do? I think that is the more fair question. They have been with the Chang'e series testing all the technologies they need. So they started out by orbiting with Chang'e 1. They did a soft landing with Chang'e 3 and 4. With Chang'e 5, they landed, they gathered up rocks, they brought them back, and now they're getting ready to test in situ stuff and things utilization, resource
Mhm.
utilization.
Yeah, so you've got that's Chang'e 5,
S-
and then Chang'e 6 is
Yeah.
due to launch just in 2024. That's going to be another sample return mission. And then you've got, as you said, you've got the more sample return missions, or
Hmm.
at least in situ resource utilization work. And this is all like leading up to let's send humans to the moon, because the technology is the same. Like, you launch a rocket from Earth, it goes to the moon. We talked about this last week. It goes to the moon, it lands on the moon, it picks up stuff. It could be rocks, it could be astronauts. It then launches them back to Earth. They re-enter the Earth's atmosphere gently, safely, recoverably, and you have done it's essentially the same mission, except instead of having a robotic lander, you send people. Instead
And
of pick up rocks, you pick up people. I mean,
and
with rocks, obviously
well,
they're gonna have rocks in
yes,
their pockets, right?
it's what
But you
humans
bring them
do.
back home.
We've determined
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So it's kind of the same thing. All right, we're gonna shift now to Mars, which there are no
Okay.
samples returned from
We
Mars.
keep not not.
Yes, yes. All right, we'll be back in a second. We're back. All right, let's talk about the bold plan to return samples from Mars.
So there is a bold plan and a less bold plan. So China has the less bold, more realistic plan, and I kind of have
Mhm.
this feeling that they're gonna succeed.
Yes. Let's start with
So
the American plan, though, the American-European collaboration.
yeah, the NASA ESA beta JAXA plan is we have Perseverance rover, which has a whole bunch of sample containers. It's roving up to rocks it finds tasty, taking a pair of samples. It is keeping one of the samples with it, and it is laying like nests of eggs, small caches of the backup samples as it travels. And the hope is that at some point in the future, a second mission is going to be able to land on the surface of Mars close enough to Percy, or Percy will still have the capacity to rove up to this other thing and do a handover of the samples
Mm.
and then launch and bring the samples back. Now, there's a number of problems that have to be solved. Problem one is we haven't figured out a handover of sample tubes yet. So that one I see as easy to solve. I'm not
Mhm.
worried about that one.
Yeah, sounds like an engineering challenge, yeah, but doable.
But then there's the issue of, so just how are we going to do the sample return, getting it off the surface? There have been thoughts of straight launch from the surface back to Earth, which, when you look at how, like, the Chinese mission most recently, it went from the surface of the moon up to orbit, did a handover in orbit, Apollo style, and then sent the orbiter back to Earth. That makes sense. Mars
Ha
is a
have
whole lot more gravity.
Right, right. Have you been seeing sort of like what the most current idea for this is? It's to throw a rocket into the air. So the plan is that they
That one
will,
I
you know,
had
they'll
not seen yet.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So they'll land with an ascent vehicle,
Uh-huh.
and then it will retrieve the sample somehow and be put into their sample capsule for the ascension vehicle,
Uh-huh.
and then it will catapult it into the air, into the Martian air, and then its motor will ignite, and then it will fly up to orbit. And I think there's issues about it just taking off directly from, they're worried about contaminating the capsule, worried about the landing environment, and so the plan is to just throw it in the air, and then it will ignite and take off to fly
Like
up into space.
like a legit trebuchet
Like a
launch
trebuchet, yeah. They will catapult the rocket. I think that's the term they're using. They'll catapult the rocket into the air, and then it will take off. And obviously, there's a timing. Like, what if it doesn't start exactly right and it
Well,
crashes?
so is this related to how NASA recently began collaborating with one of the companies that spins things around and then lets
It's
go to
been
some.
launched.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. No, I mean it's a different technology, and I don't remember the exact justification for why. And I'll now I'm going to rabbit hole into this. Why throw a rocket first? But there was like some reason why this was what you had to do. This was what made sense. And then we'll fly to orbit, meet with a return vehicle,
Yeah.
like Apollo style. The return vehicle will then make the journey back home. Then the sample will make it Earth. But I think what's important about this is that Perseverance will have spent the better part of like probably 5 years just obsessing over these samples. That each
Mhm.
one is incredible on its own. That this came from strata of sedimentary
Yeah.
rock, and this one is a piece of sand in the outflow valley from an ancient river, and this is a pristine atmosphere. Like and when that sample capsule finally arrives, and whatever, there's like 36 samples inside of it, each one is just the best of the best that they could find to bring home. And so that would be so useful to scientists back on Earth, that you have all these different samples. Let's compare and contrast to what the Chinese are planning to do.
Sorry, my brain is just so broken with the idea of yeeting things from the surface of Mars
I'll send
and
you a link
just
after we
hoping.
finish recording. Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about the let's talk about the Chinese one.
I have to admit, I know that you're an expert in China, and I'm not even going to attempt to explain it. I'm simply going to go, sir, I bow down before your excellence and ask you to explain the Chinese mission.
Okay. Um, so so the mission is going to be called Tianwen 3, and that is their third Tianwen mission. So the first Tianwen 1 was the rover, the Mars rover lander combo that recently died. Tianwen 2 is going to be a mission to an asteroid, and it will be a sample return mission from what's it called? It's called 469-216 Kamoa Oloa. My
Asteroids.
Hawaiian pronunciation. Yeah, it's an asteroid. And so 1013 is going to be their sample return mission, probably due for launch 28. And it is going to be the much simpler version of this. It's going to be, we send a rocket to Mars, lands on the surface of Mars. It has a lander. The lander has a shovel. The shovel scoops up material, grabs rocks. It will probably have a rover that will pick up some additional material. It will probably have at least one helicopter, maybe two, that will fly out from the lander, pick up samples that seem interesting. But like, you're not drilling into the perfect rock.
Yeah.
You are just grabbing it's how we work, right? It's gonna be filling its
Yeah.
pockets with as much material as it can, and then it's gonna blast off from the surface of Mars and bring it back home. And the plan is that it'll do this by 2028, and probably will research scientists on Earth will have their hands on the samples within a couple of years of that, 2031. And so we will have those first pieces of Mars. Now, the thing that we didn't go into with the NASA mission is that there are
We
problems.
there
There are
well,
big problems.
so part of the problem is the collaborations keep falling apart due to funding issues.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
Mars sample return is currently the giant vacuum cleaner of all budgeting of
Yes.
budgets at NASA. The second problem is that originally it was going to be the Mars 2020 mission, which got renamed Perseverance. Little Percy, keep going. We're sorry you lost your sister. Then there was the NASA sample retriever lander mission that it's unclear how that is getting reshaped with Mars sample return. And then there was supposed to be the European Earth return orbiter mission. And Europe is like, we do not trust what you guys are doing at the moment and have other things to worry about.
Hmm.
And so you go from having something that was planned in the 20 teens to the realities of our modern world in the mid 2020s. And it is not standing up to time, it is not standing up to budgets. And some of our partners are far too engrossed in wars at the moment to even be part of this. And then you have Congress going, why are you spending all this money?
Yeah, yeah. And like you said it's the budget that's vacuum. It is yet to vacuum up the budget, but it is fixing to, as my
Yeah,
wife likes
yeah,
to say. Um, it is like estimated at $10 billion right now
yeah,
and will likely increase. And like $10 billion is a big amount of money to spend on getting a sample of the surface of Mars. And that's a tough pill to swallow. And when we think about how much delays James Webb caused, how many missions fell under the knife because of that budget overrun. Think about what happened even with
yeah,
the SLS, Constellation, Artemis. Like there's a lot. Like we're excited that the SLS existed. We're excited about James Webb, but we're sad about the missions that had to get canceled
yeah.
because of the price that had to be paid for this. And so we want samples from the surface of Mars. Are we
We want
willing to
Percy's
pay?
life to have more meaning.
Yeah, yeah, but well, I mean, it already has so much meaning, but
I said
do we
more meaning.
want more meaning? Yeah, but are we willing to lose all of those other planetary missions? And this is always the problem.
And
Yes, we want those samples. Are we
it's
willing to pay the price?
it's already costing money in terms of every time there's a change in plan, people have to shift what they're doing, and the money that went into plan A is wasted. It's already spending money because of all the times people have to go to the Hill and testify, all the committee work that has to be done, all the scientists that propose, and then what happens. And so it has already wasted a lot of money before it has wasted true money.
Yeah.
And we want those rocks back, please. Please, can
Yes,
we have the
please.
rocks?
Percy wants to give them to us. Yeah.
Yeah. And so this is a super awkward situation, and I just don't know what's going to end up happening.
Yeah.
And I mean, for all we know, it could be human beings that walk up to Percy someday in the future and go, "Dear little robot, we're glad for your effort. You
Yeah.
saved us the walking."
Yeah, hand them over. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you saved us the walking. You saved us a week or so of us walking along, drilling some holes, collecting some samples, bringing them home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know either. But we will update you when things change and when we know more rigid. But right now, like I think it's a done deal. The Chinese are going to retrieve a sample from
Yeah.
Mars. Like, just count on this.
Yeah.
That's what happens next. Is there will be a sample from Mars that will be returned by a Chinese mission. And
Yeah.
you can decide whether that's a great thing or whether that's a thing that makes you sad or whatever. We'll leave that to your own interpretation. I
And
want rocks from Mars to come back to Earth. I'm
and
stoked.
and both JAXA and Roscosmos both have plans in the wings. I kind of doubt Roscosmos has the budgetary means to do it at the moment. But JAXA could be in there as well.
Yeah.
They have their mission to the moons. Let's see what comes
Yeah.
next.
So I mean, this isn't the moon or Mars, but I guess it's close enough. JAXA is
Yeah.
planning a sample return mission from Phobos.
Yeah.
The ISRO, the Indians are planning a
Yeah.
sample return mission from the moon. You can see this capability just building out across many nations as more and more people learn to do this kind of work. And so I'm really excited about the future of sample return. This is the new phase. We are now in the phase of let's bring pieces of the solar system back to Earth so we can study them in our labs. It's a great time to be in space exploration. All right. Thanks, Pamela.
Thank you, Fraser. And thank you so much to all of our patrons out there who make this show possible. Without you, we wouldn't have people to edit us, to make us sound good, and post things to the web and everything else that has to happen in the background. This week, I would like to thank Sam Brooks and his mom, Sean Matz, Nate Detweiler, Dean, Kimberly Reich, Tim Garish, Jeff Wilson, Paul D. Disney, Disastrina, Michelle Cullen, Philip Walker, Janelle, Dwight Ilk, Benjamin Davies, Brian Kilby, Stephen Coffey, Sydney Walker, David Bogarty, Justin S., Maxim Levitt, Hal McKinney, Ruben McCarthy, Bob Zatsky, Frank Stewart, Jordan Turner, Paul Esposito, Ron Thorson, Jason Dukas, Christian Golding, Robert Hundle, Time Lord Iro, Loneliness, and Cheeseburgers are a dangerous mix. Kudos, sir. I agree. Or ma'am. I don't know which. Daniel Donaldson, Jeff McDonald, Lee Harborn, Conrad Holling, Thomas Gazeta, Jarvis Earl, Tushar Nakinney, Slug, Will Hamilton, Sterling Gray, Adam W., Semyon Torfason, Mark Schindler, Michael Proshonda, Galactic President Scooperstar McScoopsalot, Astro Bob, John Thays. I love the diversity of your names. I hope that it implies a true diversity of humans listening around the world. As always, I apologize to what I have just done to your names.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye. And then they saved. Some of y'all are leaving pronunciation guides that do not help, but they are still appreciated.
You're just making it worse.
Yeah. It's like I do not know what those combination of letters are supposed to sound like.
Yeah, I think it's time for a deep dive into what's the sort of the universal way of speaking. Like there's a in Wikipedia and stuff, when there's like a word, there's like the universal one, because there's like 36 individual sounds that human beings make in all their different languages. And you can, once you learn that, you can pronounce any word, which is really cool.
So Debsdorf over on Twitch is asking, can we see your rocks? I actually somehow am in a largely rock-free zone, although I do have the tiniest piece of a Mars meteorite. It's not going to, there, you can see there's a little piece of rock in, whoa, I tilted that the wrong way. Come on. You can just make out the shadow. It's not going to focus. There we go. There's a little bit of rock in that. That's a piece of a Mars meteorite. So I have a bit of Mars that I keep on my desk.
That's cool. I have an asteroid above my shoulder. Let me grab it. Hold on. I'm all wired in. What else do I have? I have a piece of hummus.
Did you say hummus?
It's around somewhere. Let me put my headphones back on. All right. So I gotta put this in front of my. I can't show you my eyes.
That's huge.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
So that's a piece of meteorite. And it's heavy. Like, it feels like a chunk of exotic space metal. No question.
That's cool.
Yeah. And then I've got a piece of pumice, which is just incredibly light. Like, it just feels like air.
That's cool.
It floats. Yeah. I picked this up. I forget, some drive. I'm not the rock collector in the family. That's my wife. She is hardcore though. So, yeah.
As I said, all my rocks are in fish tanks. except for like Mars and meteorites, because like that would be both bad for the rock and the fish because they
Yeah.
rust. But other than
Yeah.
that, all my rocks are in with my fish.
You can a cool thing is you can walk along the beach and you
Uh
can
huh.
find pumice
That's
because it
cool.
floats. And so it floats on top of the ocean and it lands on the shore.
Oh,
And then
that's
and
neat.
then also is lighter than the rest of the rocks. You can just walk along the shoreline and find little pieces, especially after big volcanic events. Like
That's
it
very
it
cool.
lands in the ocean and then spreads around the world, and you find it on your beaches. Um, uh, right.
Zizink says, I want a pet rock too. You can go find one. They're out
Yeah,
there waiting for you.
yeah, yeah. Every rock wants to be wants to be your companion.
It
It's
wants
just wait.
purpose.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hal McKinney asks, when do you think Astronomy Cast will produce its first 3D full immersion episode so you can watch on the new Apple Vision Pro?
No.
Oh, there are no Apple Vision Pros available in Canada. We're not allowed to use them.
Really?
So yeah, yeah, they're only in the
Why?
US, only America. You live in the center of the universe and you don't even realize
Yeah,
it.
but you don't have ITAR restrictions on Canada.
Nope, nope. It's just they. It's just that they are trying to learn all their lessons because it's a piece of development hardware, right? So
Yeah.
they don't. It's not a consumer item that they're planning to sell. This is them putting this technology out there, testing all these fundamental ideas, letting developers figure out how to work with them. This is the worst version of the Apple Vision Pro that will ever be released, right?
Yeah.
They're just going to get better and better and better. And this is the one that is the equivalent of the 2007 iPhone.
Yeah.
But
I'm hoping that I can get my laptop to last long enough that it will be like version 2 or there's no way my laptop is lasting this long. It's a 2018. But I am
mm,
stupidly hoping that my laptop will last long enough that they'll be on version 2 or 3 of the Vision Pro
mm,
and they'll be powerful enough that you don't have to use them in concert with a laptop.
you don't.
Well, so for a lot of stuff, they still like you can't
I mean,
natively run IntelliJ on one. You have to have the laptop to display
r-
from.
right. I see. I see. Yeah, yeah. You've
Yeah.
got to have your laptop. Yeah, I don't know whether they work on the. I mean, the the M1
Hmm.
MacBook Air,
Yeah.
they're cheap now. They're like less. I saw one on sale for like $750, and it was the
Right.
fastest laptop that I'd ever used. I've switched now to a MacBook Pro, the
Hmm.
M3, but
Yeah.
the M1 was ludicrously fast. Like
Yeah.
I
I'm
switched
on the
away from it just
last
because.
i9.
Yeah, you would see so much it's it's sad, but you would see so much of an improvement on the worst Apple Silicon compared to
I know.
what is one of the best Intel ones. Um, but I don't think that things like us doing an episode of Astronomy Cast. I mean, I can't even imagine how you would pull that off inside of immersion landscape. Like, I think it's higher production value things that would be really great. Like you could show off a 3D version of an alien world, right? But like that's 3D graphics. That's Blender
Right.
time, not
Yeah.
sitting in a room.
So Kyle got Quest 3s for both of us. My husband Kyle
Mm,
got us both a Quest 3 VR headset, the Oculus one. And I almost murdered him by accident the other night because he tried to sneak past me while I was slaying zombies.
right.
And of course he went to walk past me just as I went slash and almost
That's
got him.
funny.
Um, but the things that are really benefiting from the VR experience are there's episodes of Adam Savage in his workshop showing you things in 3D that benefit
Mm,
from seeing it in 3D. There's
mhm.
a bunch of David Attenborough specials where they set up a 360 camera, I guess pair of cameras, and so you can look all the way around you at what the scenery is doing.
That's cool.
But if you then go into YouTube VR and look at what random humans like Fraser and I are producing, most of it's crap.
Yeah,
Just because the ability to record in stereo with 360 is just not consumer yet.
Yeah, and it doesn't enhance, having me in
Yeah.
3D, I don't think will enhance your experience
I
of
do not
Astronomy
want
Cast.
to be in 360.
Oh, I think it'd be fine. We'll get over it.
I don't even
Um,
like being in 4K, which
it's in
is
the
why we're
future,
not.
right? But I think, like, and I haven't had a chance to play with it, but a lot of, Marcus Brownlee, a lot of people have given enough of an overview. And I think the ones that have been really interesting are the ones where people are just putting this thing on their face and then they're living an entire day with this. Like Casey Neistat did that. He
Yeah.
put the thing on his
Yeah.
face, then he just walked around New York City for a day.
Yeah.
And it sounds like with the pass through, with the level of resolution, with the low latency, that it has crossed a barrier into something that feels kind of magic again, but also has enormous downsides. Like the thing is
Yeah.
heavy, it sits on your
Yeah.
face,
It's
it's
hot.
uncomfortable, it's hot, it uses too much power, it doesn't communicate very well. You got to have a lot, you got to have this external battery pack. Like it goes on and on and on, all
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
downsides.
Yeah.
But they've captured magic,
Yeah.
which hopefully they'll double down on. They'll improve the technology, they'll decrease the mass, they'll get this thing better. And we'll move towards eventually it being a pair of sunglasses that you put on your face that extends your workspace
Or
into this.
swim goggles. I would settle for a pair of swim goggles
Yeah,
to get rid
yeah,
of all of the light leak. Because
right. Like
I'm really,
little goggles. Yeah, okay.
yeah, I'm really
Yeah,
enjoying fully immersive experiences, even if I did almost clobber my husband while killing a
yeah,
zombie. He had it coming. He should have told me he was there.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I
but
wouldn't be surprised if Kyle breaks down and buys a Apple Vision Pro. He's the kind of guy that would do it.
he got the
So
Oculus 3 after I talked him out of getting the Apple Vision Pro.
right, yeah.
So yeah, yeah, I agree. I
I
agree.
think that thing's in your future.
Yeah, yeah. But the
But
nice thing
I
is he would
would wait.
probably not use it very long, so I would just steal it.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
My husband collects hobbies, for those of you out there who don't know.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. You take a step into some of the rooms of their house, and you're like, okay, this guy's a connoisseur. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me see. Were there any questions over on Twitch that we should talk about?
Other people who are like, $3,500 for VR means I have an Oculus. Yes.
Yeah. Exactly.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. $3,500 for VR means I have a laptop. That's my.
Null Denominator said, just remember when it comes to pet rocks, adopt, don't shop.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's, you have to find your pet rock chooses you. Let's see. Arjun asks, the next time we go to the moon, will we have a geologist to help pick the rock samples? So
I
there
hope
was a
so.
geologist in Apollo 17. That was the great. If you go and watch From the Earth to the Moon,
Yeah.
as they get through the end of the episodes, you learn about how they were starting to involve scientists in the lunar program and taught the astronauts to be geologists.
Yes.
But Harrison Schmitt in Apollo 17 was a proper PhD geologist who got to fly to the moon.
Before the pandemic, I haven't been to a conference that's that big since the pandemic, but prior to the pandemic, he was still going to conferences. And when you ask questions, you're supposed to say your name and where you come from. And he'd stand up and introduce himself as I just forgot what his nickname
Apollo
is.
astronaut? What is he?
So no. He has a nickname, something Schmidt. Rocky Schmidt?
Right.
No, that's not right.
No, you're thinking of Rusty Striker. No, I don't know what is.
Anyways, he'd introduce himself and then just say Apollo. And it was
Right.
sort of like, all right. And you'd see everyone, and whoever was answering the question would usually get pale. It was, it was a moment.
Yeah. It's like I don't know, Hercules, half god. I have a question.
Like, right. Yeah, exactly.
What are you doing in here? Son of yeah. Thor, son of Odin. Question for the scientists. What is dark matter? Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, so then I don't see any other questions, so I'm going to not rant exactly.
All right.
So I just interviewed Zach and Kelly Weinersmith about their new book, City on Mars.
Cool.
It was a lot of fun, and they're so good, such great communicators. Yeah, super fun humans, and we had a great time. I was, the problem is that I'm already in the I don't think we're gonna live on Mars anytime soon
Yeah.
camp. And so for them to present this argument that we're not going to live on Mars anytime soon, it wasn't a big stretch for me to accept their premise. And so I just abandoned any uh I wasn't going to be arguing against their premise for this interview. So instead, we sort of pushed the argument further into new places. So I think, after I finished talking to them, they were like, wow, you asked us a bunch of questions that nobody's asked us. And I think that's great because most people are still at the wait, what? We're not going to live in a city on Mars. We
Yeah.
can't make it from asteroid mining, space power. Wait, Earth isn't overpopulated. We're going to send people to space to deal with this. Like, it's not going to be a backup for humanity. Like all of the reasons why everybody has said that our future is to live on Mars. Once you debunk all those, once you show that they're just like we're not ready yet to do
Yeah.
that. But the underlying reason of why we go to space, and the one that I agree with them, and I think is that space is awesome. That why do we go to space? Because it's the best. Because space is really cool. Because it's what's next. It's the frontier. It's because humans are explorers, and we go to the places that where the exploration needs to happen. That's on the moon. That's on asteroids, and that's on Mars. And I think that there's a whole generation of people right now who are so excited about humanity's future of living on Mars. They think it's going to be the best, and they can't wait, and they're just champing at the bit to go for somebody to go and live on Mars.
Yeah.
And I feel like they're going to get really grumpy and disillusioned when that doesn't get delivered, and that's going to take away from the awesomeness that is space. Like, we didn't go back to the moon. Like, humans haven't been back to the moon in 50 years. It's probably going to be close to 60 years when human finally sets foot on the moon
3
again.
generations.
Sorry, what's that?
3 generations.
Yeah, 3 generations. 60 years is closing in on 100 years. Like, that's a long time to wait. And the reason was because there was no reason to do it. Like, once you stand on the moon and you plant your flag and you demonstrate your technological prowess, then there's no other reason to do it. And so nobody was willing to spend the money.
Yeah.
Well, now we can send missions to the moon for a fraction of the price that it costs. And so now you've got the Americans, you've got the Chinese, the Indians are planning a humans to the moon mission. You've got private companies like SpaceX, Blue Origin. Like, suddenly it's now, when it's 1/10 the price, then other people are going to be willing to do it and to demonstrate their technical prowess, and maybe for some scientific reasons. And let's have humans exist permanently in a research station. But we're still not at that bold future of 1 million people living on Mars. And I think that people think that
I
is
just want swarm bots on the moon. Give me swarm bots.
Wait, you don't want swarm bots in space, but you want swarm bots on the moon?
Gravity will keep them there.
All right. And so I just, like, all of this stuff, O'Neill cylinders, and like I think that those things are inevitable at the right time in our future. That time is hundreds of years from now. That there will be a time when, of course, we live on the moon. Of course, we live on Mars. Of course, we live in giant rotating space stations, because that's the cheap, smart thing to do. But it is not today, and it's not in the next 20 years, and it's not in our lifetimes. And I worry that people are going to sour on the awesomeness of space because we're not going to see that city on Mars as quickly as people are hoping.
Yeah.
They're so excited about it right now. Are they going to be excited about it in 5 years? Are they going to be excited about it in 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years, in 50 years, when it just keeps not being delivered?
Yeah.
Because it's too expensive, too dangerous. There's no reason to do it.
Yeah.
That's my, and so when I read the comments on the video, there's very much a, like, you people don't understand innovation and you just don't get it. And people said we should do things are too hard in the past, and blah, blah, blah. It's just a
innovation
time
is
frame.
driven by two factors: international showing offingness, for lack of a better way to phrase it,
Yep.
and capitalism.
Yeah.
Eh,
Profit.
yeah, and we don't have a capitalistic reason right now other than maybe the billionaires want to
Because space is awesome.
yeah, but the question is, can the billionaires do it before they run out of money?
Right. And they will, and that's different than, say, what how SpaceX is investing in Starlink. Like,
Right.
they're going to make money hand over fist,
Yeah.
and if they're going to use Starship to launch more Starlinks, because they'll be able to make even more money, even more hand over, even more fist.
Yeah.
But that concept of making money in space just doesn't extend to the moon, to asteroids, space power, any of that stuff today. That it is
Yeah.
orders of magnitude cheaper to dig a hole in the ground than to try to mine metal from an asteroid. And it doesn't matter how much precious metal there is on that asteroid. It just doesn't make financial sense. And so you can't use it as a justification for why we should, why should we go to space? Because there's a lot of money in asteroids, metal in asteroids. Wouldn't it be cheaper to mine that metal on Earth? Yes. Well, then why did we go to space? Then why do that
Yeah.
for space? It's not a good reason. And you can go through each one of the reasons, and you can say, well, it protects us from existential crises. Well, we got a bunch of, if you're into existential crises, allow me to present a
Pick
list.
one.
Pick one, right? If you want to try and reduce humanity's risk from existential crises, there are nuclear weapons, there is global warming, there is pandemics, there is artificial intelligence. Like, there's a
There's
whole bunch.
viruses getting thawed out with the tundra.
Yeah. Yeah. Pick and choose,
Yeah.
and put your energy into reducing existential crises. If what you want to do is reduce overpopulation and poverty, like, there's lots of that to be done. The thing that space can do that nowhere else can do is that it's space, and
Yeah.
it's awesome.
There's supposed to be another Starship test launch this month. Bets on success.
I think they're going to pull it off. Yeah, I think this is the one.
Okay.
This is the one that goes to orbit. I think. Okay, hold on. So my bet is successful launch, successful separation. Starship goes to orbit. Starship, super heavy, lands softly in the ocean, and Starship is destroyed on reentry.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Yeah.
That's my prediction.
I say less softly, more hilariously for the booster. Um, like I
I
can
mean,
see it doing
they're not
the
landing on land. They're landing
right. No, no,
unless
no. That's why I
they're
said
landing in the water.
hilariously rather
Yeah,
than softly, because I can
yeah.
see like steering issues. That thing has a
Hmm.
whole lot different of a moment of inertia than those
Yeah.
Falcon 9s.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah. So do you think there's going to be like a lot of like overcorrecting, and the
yeah,
thing's going to be, yeah, that's going to be interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I think it would be madness to try and land it on Maxilla and safely land it. Like, that's like,
yeah. No,
they've
they're
got to
not
prove that
ready.
this thing,
Yeah,
yeah, it's got to be able to land, hover right above the water, and then slowly sink into the ocean. Like, it's got to exactly what a
yeah,
landing at Maxilla is going to look like
yeah.
before they bring it anywhere near their hundreds of millions of dollar launch tower.
I'd even say that they need to have something out there that they're willing to destroy to practice their aim.
Yes. That comes next. I
Yeah.
think step one is just like, you've got the whole ocean. Aim for the ocean. Can you hit the
Right.
ocean? Can
Yeah.
you land in the ocean?
You've
Okay,
so far
great.
failed twice, so
Yeah.
let's
Let's see if you
yeah.
can pull off, as big a target as the ocean. Here we go.
Drebsdorf asks, "What if we just want to live on Mars really uncomfortably?"
Yeah. Give her. Do it.
Go for it.
Yes. Remember the part where I said space was awesome? If that's what you want to do, I don't want to stop you.
I mean, like I have this at this point in my life. If I have the ability to die on Mars while fossil hunting when I'm an old lady, I'm down for that.
Not me.
So I figure at 70, if they're willing to launch me there so I can fossil hunt, that's the point at which I'm willing, because I will
Nope.
hopefully have had a good life by then.
Not me. I like
That's because
Earth.
you still want to put your brain into a bottle and live
Well,
forever.
maybe, but I love Earth. I just love Earth. I think Earth is great. I would visit the moon if you could. If if I could go to the moon and be there for a couple of weeks and come home, I'm all down. If I go to Mars and visit for a couple of weeks and come down and it's going to cost me 3 years, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, this is where I'm seeing Mars as a one-way trip.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that either. Nope. After a while, it's just like it's a desert and
Yeah.
you're living underground. And everything you want to do, you got to wash your dirt so that you can even not die from the toxicity of it. Like we're just not, in my opinion, we're just not ready. Like you go to Antarctica and you could fossil hunt in Antarctica. Like, would you be willing to go to live in Antarctica when you're 70 to fossil hunt until you die?
There's much less fossil hunting going on in Antarctica.
There's fossils there.
There are, but there's less fossil hunting going on
Right.
because they're kind of dangerous in terms of the land falls out from under you, which is a different issue. I don't
No, no,
trust
you're no,
crevasses,
you're on the
however you
rock. You go
say
to
it.
one of the rocky deserts in Antarctica, you get a little house, you live there, and you
I'd
search for
rather
fossils.
Atacama.
Well, no, Atacama is too nice, right? What I'm offering you is the worst place on Earth, which is still a beautiful paradise compared to Mars.
I'm just not excited about the fossils there. Now, if you promised me ancient civilizations and archaeology, I'd be willing to
Maybe.
do archaeology in Antarctica.
We should wrap things up.
All right. How about Arctic, like going to Alaska and looking for the
Too
first.
nice, too close to home. No, you got to go somewhere awful, really awful, where you live underground, you pop outside, you're freezing cold all the time, you have to wear a big parka, you have to wait for
Arctic
shipment.
has that.
You have to wait for shipments of food to be delivered to you every 6 months. That
Arctic
is the
has that.
No, so Arctic, you could just hop down to a northern Canadian community and enjoy a warm bath in the one of the
Okay.
hotels. No, it's got to be worse. Got to be
Okay.
harder.
Okay.
Like you get really put your mind how bad it's going to be when you're 70 in 1,000 years from now. I mean, I'm not going to age you, right? But 1,000 years from now, when you turn 70,
All right.
we're not going to be ready.
Okay.
All right. Thanks everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Okay. Bye bye. And then I awkwardly looked for the button to transition because I'm never ready for